Welcome to Al Bernstein Unplugged on Boxing. In a 40-year Hall of Fame career, Al has chronicled some of the greatest moments in boxing history. On this podcast, you get to hear him expand on those memories and talk about the current news in the sport of boxing. You also hear Al interview some of the biggest names in the sport. Here's Al Bernstein Unplugged.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the show. Happy that you joined us as we continue what we do each week here, and that is bring you big names in the sport of boxing. Gilberto Ramirez, the former 168-pound champion who is now campaigning as a light heavyweight, 29-year-old who is hoping to win the light heavyweight crown in the near future. He'll be our guest to talk about that as he has now re-entered the sport with a win. And also, we're going to be answering your questions, as we always do, the questions you send me at Al Bernstein on Twitter. And to help me do that, my good friend and co-host, Trip Mitchell. Trip, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Al, and as you're about to get very busy, and one of the fighters in the sport of boxing, Canelo Alvarez, is going to be very busy this year. Potentially three fights, and he's going to make some people very happy, his opponents.
That's for sure. He has one fight already coming up scheduled, and then, you know, there's talk of him fighting in May. That could be against Billy Joe Saunders. They're pretty close to maybe finalizing that deal. And then in September, who knows? And many in the Canelo sweepstakes, including the gentleman that I interviewed for this show, Gilberto Ramirez, who would like a shot at fighting him. Canelo is the cash cow of boxing now. There's no question about that. His fights demand the kind of attention that makes for big paydays for opponents, and everybody wants to fight Canelo.
What is his situation TV-wise? He came to who is he going to be with? Is anyone have an advantage on that?
Well, this fight will be with DAZN, the one coming up. And I think he's working this on an ad hoc basis. So not only are fighters interested in courting him, but platforms, TV platforms, and in the case of DAZN, internet platforms, will be courting him as well as he continues. He's one of those fighters, I think, that can demand that kind of attention and be more independent when it comes to everything.
Well, that great three fights this year. The sport loves it. Let's get to the questions. The first one up, Darren O'Hare, and he has a great question. Who would you say is the greatest light heavyweight of all time?
Interesting question. And, of course, I am loath to make specific comments about who is the single one of anything. I'm not a big list maker to begin with. Because I think it's really tough to do. However, I'll tackle this question, and the way I'll handle it is by kind of putting out there the four people that I think would be in the running for this. And the light heavyweight division has been a storied one over the years and had periods where it was the deepest in the sport of boxing. The first man I'll mention, the great Archie Moore. He is thought of always as one of the top five greatest fighters of all time, pound for pound, by many people, and certainly is thought of potentially as the greatest light heavyweight of all time. And when he fought, things were different. He had a record of 186, 23 and 10, and 132 knockout wins. So that's extraordinary. That would never happen again in the modern era. He didn't get a chance to fight for the world title until he was 36 years of age, and he held the title for 10 years. So he held the title until he was 46 years old. That was in 1960 when he relinquished the title, and was an extraordinary man as well as being a great fighter. I got to know him in his later years, and it was an honor. And he was an interesting, eccentric, but very, very intelligent and self-educated man. His son, Billy Moore, who is a good friend of mine, who has continued the charitable work of the Anybody Can Foundation that Archie Moore started in San Diego. I have done work with the Anybody Can Foundation and have tried to help them whenever I can. And it's it's a wonderful organization. It helps young people through boxing and helps them with their academics as well. So Archie Moore would be, of course, one of those men. Then next on the list, we have Bob Foster, the sheriff from Albuquerque. He was a deputy sheriff from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and he held the title from 1968 to 1974, and he had a total of 14 title defenses, which is more than extraordinary. And he was a tall, rangy fighter who had amazing power in his left hook. It was a lethal weapon, and no light heavyweight could stand up to it. Now, he tried to win the heavyweight title, as did Archie Moore, who fought Rocky Marciano and gave Rocky a good battle before succumbing. Bob Foster fought both Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali trying to win titles. Could not do it. Didn't win a heavyweight title, but that does not in any way diminish him as a light heavyweight. He was an extraordinary light heavyweight, and certainly belonging in this top group that you might consider the greatest of all time. The next gentleman I'll put in there is Michael Spinks, who, of course, won the gold medal in 1976, then went on to win the light heavyweight title in 1981 and held it for 4 years, defending that title 10 times in an era when the light heavyweight division was stacked. He won his title from Eddie Mustafa Muhammad, who, of course, is one of the great light heavyweights. His fight with Michael Spinks' fight with Dwight Muhammad Qawi for a unified title is thought of as one of the most important light heavyweight matches for decades. And he just was so consistent and so excellent at the light heavyweight division. And unlike the two gentlemen I mentioned before, he was able to win the heavyweight crown and beat Larry Holmes for that title. So Michael Spinks, who was a tremendous ring technician, sometimes people remember Michael Spinks for his loss to Mike Tyson, which was, not his great moment, to be sure, but that is such a footnote in history, in my opinion, to what Michael Spinks did, and much of it, especially in the light heavyweight division. Finally, the last man I'll throw into this group is Roy Jones Jr., who held the light heavyweight title from 1996 to 2002, and he had 10 title defenses. He'd come up from the middleweight division, of course, where he had been middleweight champion, and made a brief stop at 168, but then was on to 175, and with those 10 title defenses, he dominated that division. And he did it with his athleticism, so probably the most athletic of the men I've mentioned here, of all four of these champions. And that athleticism served him well. Later in his career, when he had losses to Antonio Tarver and Glenn Johnson, his athleticism had started to fade. And I believe that while Roy Jones Jr. was a spectacular fighter, I'm not sure technically, in terms of being a ring technician, he was at the best. And so once his athleticism started to fade, he got into some trouble in terms of his career. He, too, by the way, was able to win a version of the heavyweight title, beating John Ruiz in what was an extraordinary accomplishment. So those are the men that I would put right up there as the top of the light heavyweight division. You could pick whoever you want from among that group. Probably if somebody made me make a prediction, it would be Archie Moore, or a pick. It would be Archie Moore, but you can make a case for those other gentlemen as well.
And Roy Jones Jr., just a tremendous athlete. He, when later in his career, played in a minor league pro basketball game in the morning and had a fight at night. And not too many guys can say that.
Yeah, that was pretty extraordinary. Although, if you'll recall, I did a fight in which Buck Smith played a wiffle ball game with all of us the day of his fight and fought. So I'm saying that was pretty close in terms of athletic prowess.
Okay, you got me on that one. That didn't make it into the record book.
No.
Hey, on a personal level, when you get an opportunity to go out and MC an event or do something for a fighter or his foundation, does that mean a lot to you?
Yeah, I do love it. And the Anybody Can Foundation that I mentioned with Billy Moore and that Archie Moore started is a wonderful group. And I did, in fact, MC their a few years ago their main dinner. And I've paid a number of visits there to do work with them and their foundation. So you do feel really good when you can, especially when you know it's a really good charity like that one, and you know that they're doing good work.
Yeah, fantastic. Our next question coming from Andy St. Helens. Hey, Al, was the Calzaghe fight underrated, or was it Lacy overrated? I tried that without my glasses, and I will never do this again.
All right. Well, that one has to do with Joe Calzaghe and Jeff Lacy, and I think the issue was Calzaghe underrated or was Lacy overrated for that fight. They fought some years ago when Joe Calzaghe was the 168-pound champion, and Jeff Lacy had a version of the 168-pound champion, and it was held across the pond in Manchester, and it was a fight in which Joe Calzaghe was viewed with certain, I think, some cynicism in the United States because he had made many, many defenses but had never come to the United States to defend his title, and we kind of view those things jingoistically, and so somehow he was viewed suspiciously, even though he was a terrific fighter. I announced that fight, of course. It was on Showtime, and I have to say that I thought Joe Calzaghe deserved to be the favorite in the fight, even though almost every news organization or writer, especially from the United States, was picking Lacy to win. Now, Jeff Lacy was a very good fighter, but my feeling was he wasn't quite as good as he was being cracked up to be. And so in terms of the question, you know, Joe Calzaghe, by the way, went on to win a lopsided decision win, one of the most lopsided decision wins you will ever see in a 12-round fight. He just punished Jeff Lacy, and it was an extraordinary performance. And it's a little bit of both, in my opinion. Yes, Jeff Lacy was probably a little bit overrated, though he was a good fighter, maybe not on the level people had thought of him on. And certainly Joe Calzaghe was underrated by the press. And even now, you know, somebody came on Twitter when this question was asked, and they were jumping in saying that he didn't even think Joe Calzaghe should be in the Hall of Fame, that he didn't fight anybody, he didn't fight outside of England. Well, you know, Joe Calzaghe beat Mikkel Kessler when Kessler was in his prime, beat Lacy, beat Chris Eubank when he was coming up to and getting the title, beat a bunch of other very good 168-pounders, then would beat Roy Jones and Bernard Hopkins. Now, this was when they were in their later years, but well before those guys retired, and they both had big wins after they lost to Calzaghe. So, you know, he got his share of big wins, in my opinion, and Joe Calzaghe not only belongs in the Hall of Fame, I think he and our good friend Andre Ward, in my opinion, define the 168-pound division in boxing. So I would say in that particular instance, a little bit of both, of overrating Lacy and underrating Calzaghe. Well, one of the people in the 168-pound division that I think people understood was very good and was neither under or overrated was Gilberto Ramirez, Zurdo Ramirez, who after a contract dispute with Top Rank Boxing, had a period away from the sport, then exacerbated by the pandemic as well, but came back this past year to perform in the light heavyweight division, and in fact won and promoted the fight that he had. He is now a promoter, very serious about it, and he decided when his promotional contract ended, he said, well, maybe I'll just do this myself and see if I can guide my career. And that's exactly what he's doing. And we had a chance to chat with him, and here it is. So you had a great run at 168 pounds. And before we talk about the current things you're up to and boxing that you're involved in now, let's go back and revisit that great run that you had as a 168-pound champion. You were the WBO champ and you defended it 5 times. How was that run for you? And I'm guessing that becoming a world champion was pretty gratifying.
It was great. It was great for me because I did 5 title defense, and all of them was success. And I'm 41-0 and 27 knockout. I'm so glad that what I'm doing in boxing and what I'm doing in my career. And now time to move up, time to get another title fight, another title, another title, and it's so I'm so glad. I feel grateful.
Great. Well, you are now, you just fought in December. You've moved up to the light heavyweight division, of course, and you beat Alfonso Lopez. You knocked him out. And how did it feel coming back? It was your first fight after about a year and a half layoff. How did it feel, and what did you take away from that fight?
Well, the beginning is I feel like it was a little try. It was a little rush for me, like the first 2-3 rounds, and then I started taking my time, taking back in rhythm, and at the 10th round, I feel great. I knocked him out, and I feel great. I feel great in that fight.
So you didn't feel too much at the beginning. You felt a little ring rust, but in general, it was a performance you were happy with.
Yes, it was great for me. I think 1 to 10, I give 9. Nine
Oh,
to
that's
my
a pretty good
performance.
grade.
Yeah.
That's not a bad. That's not a bad grade. Now, that was your. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second or two. But that was your first fight as your promoter. You left Top Rank a little while ago, and you promoted yourself. And this was your first fight where you were the promoter as well as the fighter. How did that feel, and what kind of pressure did that put on you?
Well, I felt like I felt great in that moment because I make my own show. I did my fight, and being a promoter is like interesting because it's a lot of fun. You enjoy. I enjoy to be a promoter. Enjoy to helping some fighter, helping people, and now I have a show February 19 in here in Mazatlan. I'm making my show for small. It's a small show for small for the fighter that I developed his career, and it's great for me. And now I'm doing everything for myself. Like I'm doing the permits, I do the venue, and it's a lot of fun.
So that's interesting. So I know you have 10 fighters signed, young fighters. So you're already starting to promote fights that you aren't even a part of, that you aren't performing in. So you're pretty committed to this idea of promoting, aren't you?
Yes, yes.
Is it something you always thought you'd be interested in, or just once you didn't have a promoter and you had to do it yourself? Was that when it occurred to you, or did you think before you were going to do that?
Well, the beginning was like I was thinking to be in boxing for a long time, but I know as a fighter, I cannot be like for I cannot be fighting all the time,
Right.
and but I was thinking like, oh, I want to be in boxing. I want to do something else, and I was thinking like, oh, I had to do I can do it like promotion or as a trainer. I was thinking like, and then one day, one friend of mine told me, hey, well, let's start doing pseudo promotion, and I was like, okay, how that works. And then everything it was funny because everything started putting in right place, and now I become a promoter and as a fighter too, and it's a lot of fun, like I say, and I just like grateful to having those kids to develop his career and talking with different people. I met a lot of people now and doing business too, and it's great.
That's interesting. So you seem like, rather than feeling the pressure of it, you feel like it seems like it sounds like it's just kind of a new adventure for you.
Yeah, it is. It's like a new journey for me.
That's great. Now, you, of course, as you continue your career as a boxer now, you're in the light heavyweight division. And you said you, after you beat Lopez, you would want a title shot as soon as you can get it. Of course, one of the people that you're kind of targeting, and he has the WBA title, is Dmitry Bivol. Is he the fighter you kind of are keying into the most to try and get a title shot?
Yes, I want to make that fight happen. I want to fight Bebo. I want to get a title fight. Now they offer me Marcus Brown for eliminator for title shot, and then is everything like everything is put in the right place in the right time, and I feel ready for anyone. And I want to take those belt, and I want to become a champion of the world again and two-time champion, and that's my goal.
So it's likely then, it sounds like your next fight might be against Marcus Brown, who is a former champion. Does it look like that would be the next one for you as an eliminator?
Yeah, it could be that one. It could be uh, be, Bebo. I could be anyone, and then as soon as I can get the title, I'm ready for.
Do you think it's easier to get these title shots because you're your own promoter, or is it harder?
I think is everything is negotiable in life. The only thing is not negotiable is the dead. It's dead. Yeah.
that's the that's a great line. That's the only thing we can't negotiate, right?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I can work with different promoters now. I can do my own thing.
So it sounds like you're finding it liberating to be your own promoter.
Yes.
Interesting. So
But I want to be my own promoter, but like I said, I'm flexible. I can work with different guys and I can
okay.
make the fight happen. I want to the good fight happen, and I want it. I want it, and the people asking for those fights, and I want to give it to the fans the fight that I want, that they want, and that's it. Is I'm a fighter. That's what I do, and then let's do it.
Now you've had a couple of fights at light heavyweight. Does this weight feel good to you? Does it feel like that's where your body should be now?
Yes, I feel 100% sure that that's my weight. I feel like light heavyweight, natural that I am, and and I feel comfortable in this weight.
You're 29 years old, and you mentioned you're 41 and oh, you've been a very experienced. You started early because you didn't have a long amateur career. You knew you were going to fixate on becoming a professional champion, but you're only 29. Do you feel like you're right in your prime period, and do you feel like you still have a number of years left in the sport?
Yes, I feel like I'm in my prime, 29. I feel like I have 6 years still in my prime. After that, I think I can start thinking about the retirement.
Well, and then you can be a promoter because you're already promoting.
Yes, of course.
Now you are a great offensive fighter. You're very active, and the only thing that people would criticize is the fact that you've had some defensive issues, and from time to time, some people have gotten in with offensive work against you that maybe was difficult to, more difficult for you to deal with. Have you worked on defense? Is that something you guys keep working on?
Yeah, always we try to working in something. That's why I give 1 to 10 my score, because always always we have something to work on it. And then it's true, because people they sometimes they talking good, they talking bad, but most of the time they're right. And I'm listening the good commentators, bad commentators, and I'm trying to work on it the best possible.
That's interesting. So you can listen and decide whether you think somebody has a good idea or constructive criticism. So it's sometimes it's probably good to hear certain things because they may be valuable, huh?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay. Are you confident that you're going to get a world title shot? Do you think this year?
Yeah. I feel 100% confident that I want to get that title fight. I want to become champion of the world again this year. I'm confident and I'm ready. I'm just waiting for the opponent for the moment, and that's my destiny to be a legend.
Well, you've had a terrific career to this point, and congratulations on that, and good luck on your endeavor to be a world champion again, and also in your new promotional situation.
Thank you so much, and appreciate uh, all the support of the people. They give it to me all the time, and I just want to say, don't miss my fights, and I want to give the best fight. I want to put the great show, best performance, like always, and I'm going to be a legend.
Perfect place to end it on. Thank you. Hey, thank you very much for doing the interview. I appreciate it.
All right. See you soon.
Good luck. Good luck on your promotions and everything.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
So that was our chat with Gilberto Ramirez, a fine young man, as you can see, a 29-year-old who still believes that his best days are ahead of him in the sport of boxing. He's an exciting fighter, and we'll see if he can get the world title shot he seeks at 175, or maybe he'll be one of those, be the lucky one in the Canelo sweepstakes and have to come down a couple pounds in weight and fight Canelo, which I'm sure he wouldn't mind at all. We still have an unanswered question that must be answered, and Tripp has it from that was sent in from one of you.
Yeah, the only unanswered question left. Kenny Davidson,
in life, in the whole world.
Yeah, it's the end of the dictionary right here.
Exactly.
Anyway, Kenny Davidson asked, "How do you do it? How do you go about being objective when you're doing the Broner fight coming up?"
Very good. Yes. And by the way, the gentleman that sent that, Kenny Davidson, if that name sounds familiar to some of you, you've probably seen newspaper articles and heard me talk about him because he is a wonderful musician in Las Vegas who has his own show at the Tuscany Hotel and Casino, which is a place where I often perform. When I'm not doing my own show there, I often co-host with Kenny in his Friday night Kenny Davidson cabaret show, in which he often has guest hosts, and I have been in that role 5 or 6 times, and so Kenny also is a big sports fan, obviously. And if you're in Las Vegas and you want to have a wonderful night of music, there is no cover charge, there is no drink minimum. Go to the Tuscany Hotel and Casino, and on Friday night, the festivities start around 8:30, and enjoy Kenny and his band. And not only do they have guest hosts, but many of the best singers in Las Vegas come in there after their shows are done and sing a tune. And it's unlike anything that you will normally see. It's spontaneous, it's fantastic, and it has provided me with a lot of fun, as I often are one of those singers that go in there. And as I said, I've been privileged to co-host with Kenny. So that's Kenny Davidson, and he asks about the Adrian Broner situation. And Adrian Broner, of course, will be fighting on February 20th against Giovanni Santiago, who is 14-0-1, a Puerto Rican fighter. And that fight on February 20th will be on Showtime. Hence, I will be announcing it. And for most of you that would likely watch this or listen to this podcast and this show, you would know that Adrian Broner and I had an interesting history with each other. Back in October of 2018, his very last fight, when he was fighting Manny Pacquiao, at the press conference, I was called in to ask questions of the fighters as my colleague Brian Custer often does, but he wasn't around, so I pinch hit for him. And no good deed goes unpunished, I found out, because Adrian Broner was kind of laying in wait for me and went after me verbally and made it quite plain that he was not a charter member of the Al Bernstein fan club. And of course, I've done a number of his other fights as well, and interacted with him prior to that. But he, and if you haven't seen any of it, you feel free to go Google it, and I guarantee you there'll be video all over the place of his encounter with me at the press conference. It was interesting, and after that, of course, then I had to announce his fight, and I did so. And I have said that after I did it, I sought out other colleagues in broadcasting and just people I know and other boxing people. And I said, what do you think? You think I was fair to him in calling that fight, given the fact that, he had attacked me just a day before the fight? And was I able to put that out of my mind and call the fight honestly? To a person, they all said yes, which I was happy about. And I believe that it is not at all impossible to do that. I have every intention of calling this fight the same way I call every other fight, and putting completely out of my mind the issue with him. It doesn't mean that Adrian Broner and I have to, go share drinks together or go clubbing, which I'm sure he'd love to do. Actually, in fact, that ironically, when he made his little attack on me, that night I was singing. I was doing my music show at the Tuscany the night before the Pacquiao-Broner fight, and I said, listen, let's let bygones be bygones. I'm saving you a seat at the show if you want to come. And he did not show up. I'm not sure my musical genre is one that he would appreciate. But I'm a big believer that you can put that aside and get the job done, and ultimately people will be the judge of whether I've done that. But I don't believe it. You need to sink to a different level when you're, just because somebody has a beef with you. I've been fortunate in my long career to have very few confrontations or difficult moments with boxers. And that was part of probably what made that situation even more dramatic to people, because I haven't had that kind of situation before very often. But, when it comes, you deal with it that way.
Can you think back, looking over the years of your career at least, any big wars between boxing broadcasters and fighters? I remember Larry Merchant obviously threatening to kick a certain fighter's butt if he was 40 years younger.
There have been confrontations. The Merchant-Mayweather one was a big one. James Toney once knocked the microphone out of Jim Gray's hand after an interview. He wasn't pleased with Jim at that point. It didn't rise to the Pete Rose level, but he wasn't happy with him. Howard Cosell, of course, had his faux controversy with Muhammad Ali, and who knows whether any of that was real. And there have been times when broadcasters have, and listen, I believe that boxers have a right to speak their mind about what they feel might be deficiencies of people that have done broadcasting about their fights. Why should they have to be silent in their critique? It's perfectly, acceptable for them to do that. You would hope that they would be understanding that that person is doing a certain job and may require talking about whether they did something as well as they should have in a fight. I also think that it is the responsibility of sportscasters to be fair. And how shall I put this? That doesn't always happen. It's just a fact. Sometimes there's bias. Sometimes there's incompetence that leads to somebody not crediting a fighter appropriately. And so if it happens, people should call it out.
Yeah,
So,
and you brought up Jim Gray. He has asked some of the toughest questions of all time,
yeah.
and I did an interview with him one time, and I think I've told this before, but you had set up an interview with Jim, and I just off the top of my head said, "What's the toughest question you've ever asked anyone?" And he said, without skipping a beat, "Why did you bite his ear off?"
Yeah.
And then I remembered.
Right. Yeah, that would be the hardest one to ask. Yeah, Jim's a tough interviewer. You know, he asks the hard questions for sure. Yeah, you never, and that's the question you probably never expected to have to ask, right? Why did you bite his ear off? That, you know, I don't.
Do you remember being really uncomfortable to ask questions of a fighter in post-fight interviews?
Yeah, I did on the ESPN Top Rank Boxing show, which I did for 18 years, and pretty much weekly. So I did 40 some shows a year of that. I did the interviews in the ring, and so I interviewed hundreds of fighters right after a fight. And one of the things about interviewing somebody right after a fight is they've just been through battle. So it's not always their best moment in terms of lucidity and overall how they approach things. But I really enjoyed that, and I found 99% of those to be really interesting and good conversations. And most of them were not difficult. Most of them were, even if you had to interview a loser sometimes, somebody that lost, for the most part, I think it's how you handle the interview. I think that's an important part of it. You need to handle it with respect. You need to, if you're going to ask a tough question, you need to do it in a certain way. You need to be understanding of the person standing across from you. But I always enjoyed it. It's one of the things I miss. I don't get to do that on the Showtime shows, and so I enjoy interviewing boxers here, obviously on our show, and I've done it in other venues. But I miss not interviewing fighters right after a fight. It's an interesting endeavor. Now, one of the people that we partner with that carries our show on their channel, and we like to talk about that channel and how excellent it is Tom Yankello and his World Class Boxing YouTube channel, which has great videos on it, both instructional and kind of historical, in which you can learn a lot about the sport of boxing. And it's called World Class Boxing, and it's on YouTube. And Tom does a great job. We're going to have to get him back on here leading up to one of these big fights and get him to do his analysis because he was an excellent guest when we had him on here. Now, upcoming trip, we've got some fun guests. We're going to have Claressa Shields coming up in a little bit, and Snoop Dogg is going to be on here within the next 3 or 4 weeks. We're waiting for the final the date when we're going to interview him, and so we have a lot of fun guests to look forward to.
Well, it will be a nice circle, and you helped Snoop out indirectly by getting him a seat on the Tyson Jones fight, and he did a great job. And there might be a future in sports broadcasting for Snoop.
He's going to be very involved. You're the guy that
got him there.
Yeah, he's going to be very involved with the boxing end of things, and we'll have some announcements to make when we have him on. So he's very committed to. He's a huge sports buff, obviously, and a great boxing fan. And when he did the Tyson Roy Jones Jr. Exhibition, he provided some fun, lighthearted moments, and everybody enjoyed his presence on that show. So we'll have a chance to chat with him at length about his love of boxing and the sport, and we may delve into some of his musical projects as well that are upcoming. I don't know if he's interested in doing a duet with me, but I may pitch that. I think.
Yeah, between the two of you, you guys have sold over 30 million CDs. So,
right.
You guys are a powerhouse.
You know what it's like? It's kind of like the Hank Aaron, Tommy Aaron collaboration where they hit over 700 and some home runs. Most of them by Hank Aaron. So, yes, I think among the records we have sold, Snoop Dogg and I, he will get the preponderance of those. There's no question. Thanks for bringing that up, Rip, too. I appreciate it. My self-esteem was going along pretty well up to that point, and you managed to take care of that very well for me. So
I'm there for you, buddy.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Anyway, we hope you enjoyed the show, and my thanks to Gilberto Ramirez for joining us. Thanks to Tripp, of course, for his fine work. And my thanks to the Let's Do Something production folks for their fine work on the show. In the future, coming up, we're going to have some big announcements about the availability of our show. Not only, of course, the YouTube show and the podcast, but also our TV version, which, as many of you know, goes around the United States and into Canada and the Caribbean on a number of stations. We're going to have some news along the TV end of things in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. We'll see you next time.